Thank you for taking time out. I know you're pretty busy at the moment preparing for the documentary to launch. I guess we should probably start with the fact that this has been a number of years in the making. So how does it feel that now it's going to be out there for everyone in the UK to see?
It feels really surreal. It's it's my first feature as a director as well. So to have it on ITV for millions to see is slightly daunting. I've been biting my nails thinking, what are people going to think, and how is it going to be received? It is kind of like opening yourself up personally, because it's not just any old story. It's something that's very personal to me, and something that's far more personal to people I know and care about. So my only hope is that it goes okay, and we can make a difference.
Yeah. And what was it that prompted you to tell Rob's story?
I suppose I've always wanted to tell Rob's story, but I've never been in a position creatively, or I've only recently begun my journey as a director and into filmmaking. I've normally been an editor, so I've always been on the post production side of things. I've never actually gone out and shot stuff other than music videos. And Colin, Rob's father, approached me a few years ago and said, "We have this documentary idea. We've shot some interviews, but we're not happy with where it's going." And I said, "Well, I'd be more than happy to take a look at it. I'm an editor. Let me take a swing at it." And from that point onwards, I started seeing things like, we need more interviews. We need a lot more. We need, basically, we need to redo this whole project, and bring in people that should have been on the project from the start, like the cast of Harry Potter, Rob's friends who were there the night he was killed, all these little things. And we need to also address the state of knife crime now, which 15 years on from Rob's death, it's a long time. And it kind of feels like we have a culture now that we're just content with, whether we're politicians or just your average person on the street. We just get on with the fact that people are being stabbed to death, and I don't think that is something that we should be used to as people in general, no matter what country you live in.
No, I definitely agree. And I think that what the documentary does well is it highlights that anybody can be a victim of knife crime. I think, like you say, a lot of people, we've got used to that there are many people being attacked by knives, but I feel that a lot of people's perception is that it's all gang based. But as this documentary proves, sometimes the victims are just everyday people trying to enjoy themselves when they cross paths with somebody that's got a knife.
Exactly, yeah. And it was just, and a lot of people, one of the reasons why I wanted to do the documentary was because over the years, Rob's name will come up in conversation, or I'll overhear conversations about Rob, or see something on social media, and they'll get the story wrong. They'll be, saying that Rob was involved in a gang, which wasn't true. And it was my opportunity to set the record straight on behalf of the family, on behalf of those who were there that night, and just people who knew and worked with Rob, because Rob was one hell of a character. He was the class clown. He was extremely ambitious, and he had a right sense of right and wrong. He always cared about righting the wrongs of injustice and being there for people who were suffering, and things like that. And to hear his name slandered sometimes just because of misinformation and things like that, that was a huge prompt for me. I thought, well, screw this. I'm going to get on this project. I'm going to make a film, because once that film is out there, you can't really do anything about it. It will do its thing. It will spread, and people will talk about it word of mouth, and hopefully, it will set the record straight for some people.
Yeah. And like you say, you had a personal connection to the story. Rob was a friend of yours. How difficult was it to relive the experience yourself while you were making the documentary? Because one, you're asking the people that you're interviewing to sort of remember this horrific event, but you yourself, as somebody close to him, how was that, sort of separating the director side of you from the friend side of you?
It was very hard. I had to bring on consultants, to make sure that when I was piecing the edit together, the storyline, that I wasn't being that I was making sure I was trying to tell the story as unbiased as possible, but putting bits of Rob in there that people could judge for themselves rather than make a love letter to my friend who I miss very dearly. And the consultants, basically would review a cut and say, no, you need to remove this. This doesn't mean anything. You're just putting this in there for the love of Rob, whereas it doesn't actually serve the story. And then eventually we brought on Nick Kenton, who's a television producer in true crime, had done a lot of great stuff, and he whipped my arse into shape because we had a version of the film that was about 1 hour, 20 minutes. And whilst I was happy with it at the time, they always say kill your darlings, and having to be brutal and cut that down even further with the broadcast length in mind, that was hard. But also from the flip point of that, when I was editing it on my own, say like the night Rob died and things like that, and it really got to me. It was quite painful to go through and relive, and basically if I wasn't in tears by the end of a cut or the end of a shot or something like that, then I knew I'd failed as a filmmaker, but I also failed as a friend to get it right. I had to make sure that everything that you see in the documentary that happens that night has to move people, and everything is there for people to see in terms of sound bites with Colin and Sally, Rob's parents, Jamie in particular. So it's just guiding the narrative. There wasn't so much I had to do as an editor, really, at the end of the day. It was just making sure that we hit the right beats on stuff. But it was horrible to spend nights going over and over and over again, and you're pretty much living it for months and coming back to it. And then the worst part of it all is that you invite Rob's family over to watch the cut, and watching the film back with Jamie and watching it back with Sally was a horrible experience. There were bits in it where they would laugh and they would see their son again on the TV, but then there were moments like the night Rob died and the court case that you're sitting there with them, and you can just, it was an experience. And I felt absolutely terrible having to do this. But at the end of it, they understood and respected what I had to go through in terms of making this happen. And if it didn't move them and it didn't move me, then, we would have failed.
Well, it definitely got a few tears from myself as a parent and as somebody who lost a friend at a young age in very different circumstances, but still suffering that bereavement at a young age. There was definitely something.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Sorry, it's many years ago, but it is something that stays with you, and I think that helped me sort of connect to the story in that way. So I guess there is then that broader appeal than people who are, I guess, true crime fans. There is this universal fact of, there are many parents who have outlived a child, and friends who have lost people young. So I feel that there's definitely a wide audience. You're hoping that it'll appeal. I mean, appeal's the wrong word, but you're hoping that it reaches a wide breadth of the community.
Yeah, exactly. No, I understand that, and I suppose one of the things that really helped us from the beginning, and this is something that the foundation and Rob's family were very aware of, was the fact that if Rob wasn't in Harry Potter, you and I wouldn't be talking, to be honest. This documentary wouldn't be a thing, and there wouldn't have been any publicity. So we are definitely riding the connection with the Half-Blood Prince to do good, which we know that Rob would have wanted us to do with his legacy. Obviously, there are families out there and people who've lost people who don't really get to tell their story because there isn't a hook. And that's such a horrible thing to say, like, oh, their death doesn't have a hook to it. And I hate that. And I'll give you an example of this. When we were doing the documentary, I think we were probably into the first or second year of the production, and we were looking at trying to get some interest from the press. And I remember speaking to someone, I can't remember who and what they were from. It was definitely a tabloid or whatever. And they just basically said, oh, it's been 13 years since Rob died. It's not really much of a hook, is it? We need an anniversary, like 20 or 15, which ironically we are now in the 15th year since Rob died. And I realized, oh, that's how it works. That's how people give a shit. And that's how we'll be able to tell our story. It's not like we waited for the 15th year. It just so happens that ITV bought it last year and had intended to show it this year, and it just lined up. But again, it made me think really bitterly about how to get a story out there. What are the hooks? And unfortunately, I learned a lot during this process, and I'm still learning.
And outside of the family, there are some more famous faces that people will recognize. How does it feel then when you've got somebody like, Ray Winstone and Tom Felton? They're there to champion Rob's story.
Well, that's the great thing about the documentary as well, is we're blessed with the fact that Rob worked with so many talented artists, and it's a testimony to him really being such a nice guy and so nice to work with, that Tom Felton, for example, immediately wanted to be part of the documentary and wanted to say something. With Tom Felton, he actually filmed his own interviews for us because it was during the pandemic. He arranged a film crew and, wore a suit and everything, and he sent over the footage to us, and we were able to work with it. And he's been an absolute champion for us ever since. The same for Ray Winstone. Ray has been with us since the very beginning. He's a very good friend. He's so nice and so humble that I remember he was one of the first people I contacted when we started this production. And I just said, look, we're making a documentary about Rob. And before I could utter another word, he said, when do you need me? And that was it. And I just thought, oh, he's such a lovely guy. The same with Jim Broadbent. He was an absolute gem to work with in terms of stories about Rob, and he remembered everything about Rob as well. It clearly meant something to Jim to say all these things and remember eating the pudding and giving him advice and Rob ignoring his advice. And same for Danny Harmer. Danny Harmer's stuck with us ever since. We're in contact all the time about where we're going press wise and getting the word out there. And she's always sharing stuff on her social media to all her fans. And so yeah, that's been a dream, really. I mean, it would have been great to have people like Emma Watson and Daniel Radcliffe, but Daniel Radcliffe declined purely on the fact that he didn't know Rob that well, and he didn't want to mislead audiences by thinking they were best buddies. And I respected that. I thought, well, yeah, I clearly want Daniel Radcliffe in this film because you're Harry Potter, having a big name like that. And Emma Watson was, I think, pretty much the same. But we did get David Yates, the director, and we spent a day with him, and we were able to learn more about what Rob was like as an actor, which I didn't really know about. In a professional capacity, I didn't work with Rob on a big movie set, so I was curious to know what was he like working with A-listers, and how did he treat the role of Marcus Belby. This is all the flesh and bone of like the documentary, is learning about Rob before we take him away in a very cruel manner. So that was super helpful.
And the documentary is just one part of Rob's legacy. There's also the foundation, and then the Rob Knox London Festival, which you have recently become a much bigger part of. What can you tell us about the festival?
Well, the festival has been running, I think it was the year after Rob died. They renamed the Bexley Film Festival, which was run by Michael Waring, the Rob Knox Film Festival, and that's been going for 14 years. And I've been attending all of them, I think almost all of them, and just to see Rob's name on the big screen in the Bexley Heath Cineworld and see all these rising talent come through with films and not just films. They had singers and acts and things like that would come through. One of which went on to win X Factor. I can't remember his name, but yeah, a lot of talented people have gone through and then gone on to work in TV and film. And that is huge. I mean, Rob would have absolutely loved that. And then last year, the organizer, Michael Waring, retired, and the foundation had to think about where they would like it to go and how they would like it to keep going. And my name popped up, and honestly, it's sort of been a secret ambition of mine to run a film festival, but to take over the Rob Knox Film Festival is a huge dream for me because I get to carry on the legacy. It's like getting the Olympic torch, and it's my turn to run with it now and see all these amazing, talented people come through. Because the filmmakers of, the young filmmakers of today are very different than the young filmmakers of 15 years ago. We have different software, we have access to different things. Things work very differently now. So I get to learn along the way and see. And we've had so many incredible films submitted as well. And to go through them and to work with our new judges, which will be announced, they'll be announced soon, is absolutely fantastic. And I get to work with Alice Amata, my partner, who's helping to co-organize it with me, as well as Stuart Morris of Misty Moon, who we just so happen to be working on a project, a short film together. And I said, well, this is what's happened. Have we got any advice? And then we just, over the course of a conversation, we decided, well, let's run it together, because he has experience running his Misty Moon events, and I kind of look up to him in a way because he's been doing it for so long, and he's got he knows the do's and don'ts of putting on an event at the Cinema Museum or the Phoenix Arts Club. So it just made sense to partner with him and Alice. And Colin is still there, and so Sally in the background, making sure everything goes well. But we will be changing venues from Kent to Central London, which is, I think, one of the best decisions we could make with it, because one, everyone knows Central London, and two, we're going to be at the Cinema Museum, which is just this amazing venue and perfect for something like the Rob Knox London Film Festival.
And when audiences sit down with this documentary, what is the one thing that you would sort of hope that they take from the story?
I really want to, and I keep saying this to people when people say, what do you hope will happen? And I honestly, the only thing I can think of is I hope we can make a difference. That's my main thing. This has to be a game changer for me. It's no good people watching it and going, that's sad. Okay, let's watch Family Guy. I don't want that. I want it to stay with them. I'll share something with you now. There was a friend's mum approached me a couple of years ago because their son did the dubbing mix on Knox, and he's had to live with it for a while now as well, in terms of getting it out there. And he showed it to his mum. They watched it together, and then the very next day she burst into tears in the supermarket, just out of nowhere, because she was thinking about it, and it got her in the gut. It really affected her. And she told me about this the next time I saw her, and she gave me a big hug, and I saw in her eyes how much the story affected her as a mother. And I thought, if that's the reaction that people in Britain will have to this documentary, then fantastic, because people need to be moved, and no movement can start without a catalyst. And this, I hope, will be a huge catalyst, not just for, if Rob's legacy is to prevent further bloodshed and knife crime and deaths, then we did our job, because Rob can't talk on our behalf. I mean, he can in the documentary, but it's up to me, it's up to Colin, it's up to Ray Winstone, it's up to all these people who worked for free and put their time and energy into this documentary. It's like a tapestry, Rob's story didn't end on the day he died. Rob's story continues on now. It's the reason why we're doing ITV. It's the reason why we're doing all the papers and the tabloids. It's not so much Rob now. It's more of a sign. It's more of us saying, we're sick of this shit. We don't want any more kids dying. And it's not just kids either. It's everyone. We're sick of this way of life. Something has to be done about it. I'm not waiting for a politician to decide on something, because in the course of Rob's death, we've had Labour, we've had Conservatives, and nothing has been done. Things have been done, like stop and search, but then they ballsed it up and they didn't fix it. They didn't come up with another idea. They just, wow, that didn't work. Okay, fine. We tried. Not good enough. That is simply not good enough. We have to inspire change. And if we can do that with a film, which I do believe film has the power to do that, and if we have ITVX showing it to everyone in the UK, then I'm hoping that that will spread and we'll get other territories like America or Australia or Spain, Italy, because knife crime is starting to pop up on my newsfeed, not just in the UK. I'm hearing terrible things about Japan, Italy. I'm thinking, what is going on? This is ridiculous. And if anyone could sort it out, if anyone was bulletproof in my mind, it would be Rob. And I know that this is what he would want. So we're going to keep on fighting until it stops.